Today we have a mystery about UFOs. Have you noticed that the old black and white photographs look like this? But in the 21st century, with millions of high-resolution camera phones, we see images like this.
Dude, what is that? Whoa. What the hell? It probably knows that we're recording.
What's going on and what's gone wrong? The frustrating problem is this. Many UFO images fall into the L.I.Z, the low information zone. There's just not enough resolution, data, or facts about where the photograph was taken. One man might have an intriguing answer. John knows exactly what's gone wrong with our camera phones today and has come up with an intriguing idea to take better UFO pictures. Hey everybody, guess who I have on the channel today? John Craig. John Craig absolutely knows how to photograph UFOs and has studied the phenomenon for years. I met John Craig through a fantastic article in a publication called Medium, where he has come up with the most amazing way of lifting UFO photography out of the low information zone into a way that actually can record serious data, but still using camera phones and amateur equipment. But first, I'm going to go over to John and ask him, hi, John, who are you? Can you tell the viewers your interest and your background?
Hi, Simon. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, I started getting interested in UFOs way back. And I've always been a technical person, writing books for Microsoft and getting into electronics a lot. So in recent years, I've decided we got to do more to figure out what this phenomenon is instead of just collecting data. We need to collect better data and be a little more proactive on figuring out what's going on. So briefly, that's my background. And I'm working on a couple of electronic boxes and some other things for what I call proactive disclosure right now.
Ooh. Need to know. that will be great. We'll have you back and you can tell us all about disclosure. That would be great. So let's today have a general chat. So photographing the unknown, photographing the weird, photographing flying saucers when that was first penned, you know, after the Arnold sighting where it was misinterpreted as a flying saucer. But it's been very important, and people have seen and do see, and we can't deny that there's highly strange stuff out there. But it seems to me that the photography from the 1950s and 60s on film with heavy, you know, film cameras, where people probably just took one picture, are often better than the era, the paradigm we're in today, where everybody has a very high quality, or at least functioning, camera phone, where there doesn't seem to be the millions of incredibly fascinating, strange UFO or phenomenon pictures out there. So before we talk about how, if you do see something and you're lucky enough to want to record something that you really don't understand, what's your views on why, in this era of millions of camera phones, that there are very few convincing pictures? I mean, what's the best ones that you've ever seen?
Yeah, that's a real frustrating part of the phenomenon here, is that there are so many cameras right now, but there are people that are making up fake stuff, of course, and even the AI stuff. Now we got to watch for that.
Right.
But it does help that we have a lot more cameras, because there's a better chance we can catch some good pictures. We just got to filter out the stuff that's not the real stuff, if you put it that way. And yeah, the cameras have gotten better, but then the chemical, the old film cameras do have some advantages, even for forensic studies and stuff. Although the digital ones that they do have in the metadata, as they call it, you do have the date and time and location exactly on a lot of smartphones, and that really helps too. So it's a trade-off. So my hope is that we can do some things to get much better photography. And distance is the thing that's really hard to get, and never has been easy to get. But if we can do a little bit of stereoscopic or parallactic shift kind of photography with two cameras, I mean, that's why we have two eyes, is so that we can tell depth perception.
Right.
And you have two cameras separated by like maybe even out on a meter apart, fixed real firmly together. You can calculate a lot of things from that. Like I've seen a lot of UFO case pictures or videos even of well, they claim they're UFOs, but they look like bugs flying by to me. And if we had stereoscopic view
Right.
of those, we could tell the distance. And if instead of 500 feet away, a big UFO, if it's just 3 feet away or meter away, bugs, then
Right.
we can get more accurate information that way.
I think, yeah, I so agree with so many things that you say. I think in some ways that if you had a decent SLR camera back in the 60s or a decent big format camera in the 1950s, you knew how to use it. And I think also it forced you to photograph things in a way that you would actually choose a vantage point and a distance. And I think today a lot of photographers are very confused. I think your example of bugs is brilliant. I get sent a lot of drone footage where a very fast moving flying saucer zooms past the mountain in the distance. Or is it actually a bug going right past the drone? Because, the drone cameras are designed to have a very wide field of view, field of focus, if that's, makes it easier to understand. So everything from a few inches to, a few miles away is going to be in focus. Whereas in the past, you'd have to choose, close up, medium, or infinity. And I think that's led to a confusion. I also think that digital photography has an issue with compression. I think a lot of people tend to take a picture and then rather than send it to the chemist to make an enlargement, they digitally zoom it in. And what are they going to see? Well, they're going to see JPEG, probably compression, and suddenly they're seeing false color and artifacts. And that can
Yeah,
lead to some confusion. Um,
yeah. A good friend of mine is a MUFON forensic photo analysis person,
right.
and he hits that all the time. He needs the original photographs from the phone, if at all possible, because there's the metadata, and you're not getting all that kind of distortions from the compression and all the things. And it depends on the phone too, of course. But yeah, it's a challenge. It really is.
Yeah, okay. Let just for people, I'm sure most of your and my viewers will know all about what metadata is, but just explain. So when somebody takes a picture on a modern camera, the image is recorded, but what else is recorded? What is metadata?
Well, it kind of depends on the camera. I've looked through a few photos from some different photos. I've got a Samsung smartphone right now that has really good metadata in it: the date, the time, the latitude and longitude, which is very useful for UFO studies.
Yeah.
And what else is there? There's several pieces of metadata in there. The focus, the f-stop, those kind of technical details that can help a lot on that analysis.
And you can immediately see that the picture that you're, say, sharing online or wherever is the original picture and hasn't, if it had been post-production, we've
Exactly.
got big scandal in the UK this week with a piece of royal photography that obviously the metadata comes up Photoshop. And you go, oh, okay, so it's not the camera original. It turns out there was some retouching done. But so, it's just, it as your friend needs in forensic evidence to go back to the original, to go back, if it was a big DLSR, the SD card or a phone camera, the original file would be add extra information. Oh, right. So yeah. So when you take a picture, folk, of something unusual, share the very, very raw original picture because it will encode metadata of your time and latitude and longitude. Do you think it actually, the lat long is great, but the other thing that would be fantastic with metadata, I don't know if it does record it, is the actual position, your position, whether you're facing north, south, east, or west. I don't know if that's recorded.
So yeah, on some cameras, I did notice on phone, it did give me that information. I don't know how accurate it is, but it's there, and I'm not sure how many phones have that. one thing that I worked in solar energy a lot over the
Yeah,
years,
yeah,
and so I understand exact sun position really well, calculating wise. And
right.
so you can from shadows and things, you can determine which direction you're looking to. So there's a lot of information you can get out of photos if you're careful and do it right and start with the
Oh,
originals, like you said.
isn't it great to have that skill to be able to look at a shadow or look at some real world data and know which way that you're facing? Um,
Yeah,
I think
helps.
that's great. I'll tell you an amusing story. London, where I lived and worked for many years, is it's like any big canyon city, is a maze, and it's particularly difficult because it's an ancient city. And long before sat navs, there were two bits of incredible information that you could get. By driving around, and if you needed to know which direction you were pointing, that Londoners used all the time, and I've hardly heard people repeat this. One is that every TV antenna all point to the transmitter, which was due south. So
Oh,
if you saw a TV antenna as you drove past the weird street, you knew which way that you were heading. And the second thing is because of the prevailing winds in London. Every airplane in London heads west into the prevailing winds. So if you look up and see an airplane, you're probably heading towards Heathrow Airport.
cool. Those are fascinating clues, and it's amazing what you can figure out. But those are good ones. I like that.
Yeah, same with satellite dishes, of course. They're going to point to geostationary satellites. Anyway, in your fascinating Medium article, and a lot of the points that I want to really help with is, as I said, taking out the amateur picture out of it's just a blurry single point source into something more with more information. Can you explain why it would be what if you were so lucky and saw something which you really can't explain, you have difficulty in putting words into it while out. What what would be your suggestion of how to get a parallax fix on that? What were you talking about in your article, which I will link to this channel?
Well, there's several things. One, if you've just got one camera, which is the case most of the time,
Hmm.
try to get pictures from two different. If you can get to known locations, like step up to a building, maybe, and put your back on the corner of the building. It's just an example. And if you can get, more importantly, if you can get background information like a tree or telephone pole or a building
Right.
in the picture with the object, power lines, anything, that can help a lot in determining direction and elevation angle and all the data you might need. If you can get two pictures and like run to the other corner of the building, you
Right.
might, and if it hasn't moved, for instance, I mean, every situation is so unique, but just kind of mentally, if you think of it that way, you might be able to get some parallactic analysis and tell how far the thing is away. If you have two people with cameras, go take pictures roughly the same time from two places. That might help.
Oh, I think that's just fantastic because one of the issues, I think we've all driven down the country road at night and this fireball goes over our head and it lands in the trees well, it probably didn't. I've
Right.
certainly seen many shooting stars when I lived in the Midwest and even here in France. We saw one just recently and it actually made a noise and we could see it. And
Oh,
it was actually a piece of satellite re-entering. And when I went to MUFON and other people, we assumed that it had landed in the next village, maybe my friend's house. But no, it actually crashed into the Bay of Biscay, which is 250 kilometers from us. So size is very important, as always.
yeah, that's a common thing about meteors and meteorites is that they typically look closer than most people report them a lot closer than they really are. But and yeah, the size and the distance and
Right.
the angular size, all three go hand in hand. Like the moon is only half a degree in angular size, and so is, I don't know, one of your fingers or fingernails or something like that at
Right.
arm's distance, and half a degree. So but they're not obviously the same real size. And so that's what we hit with UFOs is if you don't know the distance, if you do know the distance, then you can calculate the size based on how many pixels in the picture it took up.
Right.
And they go hand in hand. And And that's one of the things that's really frustrating. Bugs and orbs and things can look like there's something big far away, but they might just be real close. And so we got to filter those out to find the really good stuff.
Right. Yeah. 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 Dust mites and things that kind of blurry really close on the lens or very, in the environment that you're taking, say, illuminated by car headlights or something, could be very confusing. Oh,
Right.
so here's a more general discussion about the phenomenon, and that is, how do you think we are as humans at understanding the highly strange? Don't we tend to use our brains, use language, which is like a computer kind of basic language, because we look out the window and we need to name things. You look out the window and say, sky, tree, grass, woman, dog, house. And that naming actually identifies our reality. But if you looked out the window and you saw amorphous blob, I think two things tend to happen. One, we ignore it because it doesn't fit our brain database, or two, we start using it looks a bit like, and it was kind of the size of a football pitch. And so we start using analogies and things. Do you think that's true? Do you think the humans are particularly poor? Our perception system, our vision, our way of processing is quite bad when seeing the truly anomalous?
I think that's true. It's like even the words we've used throughout history, like flying saucer, it's not a saucer, it's something else, but it looks like a saucer. Or even back in the 1800s, the air blimps and the airships, they call them
Right.
as the only frame of reference they had. And today we call them cigar shaped or a sphere, just really simple words. And yet, yeah, it could be something completely bizarre to us. Our perception is so based on our history, what we've ever known or seen. And so when we start looking at things that are completely anomalous and different, that's where it gets even harder to estimate size and distance. So it's going back to that.
Well, yeah, it's the foibles of being human. I mean, how wonderful it is to
Right.
be human. But I always think that the truly anomalous, the truly alien, the truly non-human technology, or the real unknown is going to look really different. I get a bit frustrated, as you just said, in the 19th century, the most advanced technology that people could think when they saw something odd was a dirigible or a balloon or a blimp. In the 50s, they were talking about shiny aluminum with rivets and portholes and legs and things. And I think today, ever since World War II and the advancement of physics, we tend to talk about phenomenon, and maybe it's a strange physics phenomenon rather than solid. But maybe we are using historical context to describe exactly the same thing, because there's evidence that people have seen the anomalous, going back thousands of years. And I think they put it into their own cultural, window, into their own cultural box. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, we can even see that today. We have people that
Right.
think in terms of nuts and bolts. I tend to do that, but there's other people that think in terms of spiritual and vague, energies and stuff. And the truth might be somewhere in between those two. We just don't know. But yeah, it's all based on who we are and how our brains are put together from the history of our lives. And
Yeah.
so be open-minded to really figure out what it really is. That's the key. And that's tricky. Got to
I think it
work
is.
hard.
I mean, but maybe humans, we survive on not being very open-minded. I think that
Yeah.
the cases that I've come across where people have seen genuinely anomalous stuff, I'm very involved with U.S. Air Force John Burroughs, who encountered something in Rendlesham Forest that was extremely odd. It doesn't meet any, it was more a force, it was more, and also, interestingly, a number of people saw the same event and described it differently, which could be an actual part of the phenomenon, that it actually triggers your reactions or your perception in different ways. Some people saw a solid object, other people felt a presence, others just saw lights, but all saw the same thing. So I think it opens a can of worms, as they say. But I mean, that's why we need decent pictures. One of the frustrations of even the Navy material, military sensor data, is it's not really good enough for scientific analysis, and also we tend to analyze it in wrong ways. I mean, the FLIR, forward-looking infrared picture of the so-called gimbal, we tend to assess its shape based on it being visible light when it's actually a heat signature.
Yeah, and it's had that weird cold fringe around it. Just it's hard to explain that. And yeah, it's just we've got to do the best we can. And I think scientific, rational analysis without jumping to conclusions is by far our best bet. We can find those amazing conclusions if we do it right, but we can't just guess.
No, we can't. And so many of very, I'm sure people see stuff. I'm sure people have anecdotal evidence of encountering the strange. So let's go over again. Let's make a kind of toolkit together of, so you're driving down the country road and there in front of you, hovering above the tree, is something that you've never seen before. It's very hard to explain. You don't really know its size and its distance, and you pull on the handbrake, get out the car with your camera phone. How would you think, how would you proceed to photograph that?
Um, First, I think it's important to know how to get to your camera as quick as possible. I practice that all the time. That helps with the first step. Yeah, make sure you can get to the camera on that, and then try to get something in the background if you can. Frame something for frame of reference. And what else? Mostly get some still footage, and video can really help too. So both of those, if you can do it, if you have time, and if you can,
Right.
A lot of people kind of blank when they're confronted with something like this, and it's hard to think clearly. But if you practice it before, you might be surprised how well you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you say, nip across the other side of the road, get a distant reference. And in your Medium article, which I'll link in the description, you have a wonderful example of something in the sky, and behind it was known references of known stars. And because they were taken by both, correct me if I'm wrong, you and your wife, there was a parallax distortion. And because of that, you could tell its size and a more accurate position. So stars could be useful.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun doing that. It was very complicated math, but not out of the reach of possibility to do. What you do is she went about, let's see, I got the number here. It was right at 40, no. About 20 miles from here to a known location. We got the exact GPS location. And one of us was in the backyard, one of us was down there, and we knew that the ISS, the International Space Station, was going to be going over.
Right.
So we, on tripods, we set up our cameras, and we had it taking 10-second exposures exactly. And created a little thing to automatically do this every 15 seconds.
Wonderful.
So we went to a little bit of extra work on this, but we got these series of photos, and with a 10-second exposure, you can get this is just with our smartphones, and we could get the stars in the background.
So the ISS was, of course, moving, so it produced a motion, a streak, but stationary single-point objects, stars, don't move so fast.
Some of the stars are to the left of the trail, and some of the stars are to the other side in the two pictures.
Right.
And because the stars are basically an infinite distance, we could get the exact parallactic shift. And then there's other parts to the calculation, like, well, if it's lower in the sky towards the horizon, it's going to, the distance to the space station is going to be further. Right. But I ended up, after doing all the calculations, of figuring out the altitude above the Earth for the space station, and I came out within 5 miles, which I was surprised.
Could that possibly be something that you could offer as a program, or do you think that is available?
I thought of that. I write programs, Python programs a lot for my wife and what she does
Right.
and some other things. But yeah, turning it into a commercial program, it's a possibility, but it'd take a little bit of work to really clean it up. Let's just say I kind of did it in pieces but yeah, that'd be fun to do.
Yeah, it doesn't
And
have to be commercial. I think something like the Science Coalition for, looking at anomaly objects, or MUFON, you could
yeah,
have a pet person there that when the anomalous picture comes in, and it's got the parallax, and they can say, "Oh, I can use John's software to actually work out speed, height, and distance and direction."
yeah,
Yeah,
working out some ideas along those lines. Even the length of the trail for 10-second exposure, you can get a lot of information just from that with the single camera. But yeah, I'm working with some people at MUFON to try to set up some things like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, congratulations, because that's certainly what we need. As I said, we need. So, do you think, as a man who used to use Kodacolor film, um, just about, do you think camera phones actually offer any real advantage? Because, going back to my opening point, where's the decent pictures?
Yeah, it's I think that probably the biggest advantage is having everybody have one. So if you can get 3 or 4 people in a neighborhood that all happen to get pictures of the same object that was hovering over somebody's house,
Yeah.
you could really get a lot better quality corroborating evidence from something like that. Whereas in the past, with just chemical film cameras, you might have one person, maybe if they're lucky, go inside and get their camera and all that. But
One
with people
picture.
standing in the yard with their phones right there in their hands, and I think there's a better chance we can get some quality evidence based on the metrics of the thing, not necessarily the image itself, but what's the calculations from the image. That's kind of where I'm at. I think we can
Well,
gain some better analysis from that.
just amazing. I mean, imagine you were at a football game and you look up and go, "What's that?" Just tell everybody around you, "Can you photograph that too? Do you see
Right.
that? Take a photograph." And then, after it's gone or after the game or something, say, "Can you please share your images with me?" And suddenly you've got parallax, you've got multiple witnesses, and suddenly it
Yep.
becomes far more interesting than the wobbly picture of who knows what at night, which
Yeah, that's a really good example because you can have people, you can get the exact seat locations from the people
oh,
and get their images, and yeah, you could figure out a lot from that. It'd be nice if we could have something like that happen.
well, let's suggest it. So any time that you see something where you're surrounded by other people, the chances are they're going to have a phone, even in a more rural setting. And if you've pulled your car over by the side of the road and somebody else stops or a cop comes up, get them to take a picture or shoot it on their video camera. And so it takes things out of the low information zone, and hopefully it brings it into a zone that people can, using your software or other photo analysis, can actually say, "Ooh, that's kind of interesting," or it's actually a landing light of a 737.
Yeah,
But whatever the answer is, we need to know, because um, one of the things that I'm very keen on is to focus not on the things which are easily explainable and the mistakes and the misidentified, um, and just so dismiss the whole field of the unknown, but look at the real unknown. There's real unknown out there. It's very hard to pinpoint because you don't know where it's going to occur. But I think one of the criticisms of the recent Arrow report was that because the information that they looked at could pretty well be explained, I think they went too far at dismissing the whole field as prosaic and probably not true. Whereas
yeah,
there are many cases of people, sadly a lot anecdotal, but using your photography techniques, which we encourage today. Please let's try and capture the 1 or 2% of the truly strange things out there.
Yep. If there's actually, I think if everybody could use their smartphones and more people on a sighting can get those pictures, it has several advantages. One is like we've been talking about, where the metrics, the measurements, and all that.
Yeah.
But also just the fact that you've got like 4 or 5 different people reporting the same object, the odds of that being somebody being mental or faking it or anything else like that, it lends to the credibility. It helps build the credibility on that particular sighting. One person seeing something is okay, but 3 or 4 people seeing something helps a lot.
Phones don't work the same way as our eyes work. A bug very close to a camera can look very large, where we're very good at knowing that it's a small bug because we pull focus down to the fly that's going past us, whereas the camera just records the whole image. And then when we analyze it later, it's hard to understand. So here's
a lot of the companies, Apple and the Android phones, they tend to want to help you out by fixing up the picture and doing processing on it, and that's frustrating. It'd be nice if we just had pure pictures. So there's a trade-off there too, but yeah, it can kind of make it murky if it's all processed and stuff automatically. Even it doesn't help.
No, so, and definitely when you're sharing images, if you are watching this and you've got something that you've seen and you photographed, share the very, very original data, the SD card or the file from your camera. Don't try and post-production process it before you share it. And obviously share a raw image or the full file size, unadulterated. Even although you'd be tempted to zoom it in or make it more contrasty, just don't, because there's going to be information that will actually be lost by you enhancing it.
Right, that's true. And yeah, and some phones do give you the raw image capability. If you can do that, that's ideal. Yes.
Oh, great. So you live in Colorado.
Denver area. Yes.
In the Denver area, fantastic city and high up and great dark skies, no doubt, outside of the urban environment. What's the strangest thing that you've seen in your life history?
I've actually seen several things. It started when I was very young, and my whole family saw 3 or 4 silver, and I thought I saw one red. They were flitting around each other in the blue sky. It was actually over Syracuse, New York. Oh. And that's what got me started. And then other people I knew had seen things, and then I've seen some things that I've been able to explain. Now, I like to be able to do that, because if you try your best to explain, and you can, that's fine. But if you can't, then you've given it a good shot, and that kind of lends a form of credibility too. Mm-hmm. For instance, one day I was walking just after dark, and I saw what looked like a comet with a tail that was kind of curved up, and it was drifting across the sky at a noticeable speed. I said, "That's not a comet. What in the heck is that?" It was a pretty wide angle of angular size on it. And after I got back to the house, I did the calculations, looked up on the online and stuff, and it was a wastewater dump from the space shuttle, and it was in the sunrise towards the northwest, where the sun was below the horizon, but there's just enough sunlight up there in the orbit that it glowed pretty bright, and you could see this cloud of wastewater. It was really awesome. It was fun to find that out. But then I've seen other things that I can't explain, that I just, I know there's something going on. That's the best I can say.
Have you seen something which you found difficult to process, by rationality, that you see it and go, I genuinely don't know what I'm looking at?
I think I tend to kind of project a nuts and bolts answer on things, so I haven't really seen anything too weird, spiritually or anything weird. Most of the things I've seen have been like a light. Well, my brother and I saw something that was moving across the sky like a slow meteor or really fast jet, and it suddenly made a U-turn. And in a fraction of a second. It wasn't, it didn't disobey the laws of physics, but it was a really fast turn at high altitude, it looked like.
Right.
And so that one mystified me. But most of the times I kind of think of it in terms of nuts and bolts, some sort of a UFO. something.
From what I have heard and have many witnesses say, there's definitely something unknown out there. How we can actually measure it, obviously people like Avi Loeb's doing a brilliant job setting up his Galileo project, hopefully on the rooftop of Harvard, or if he gets funding to set them up in Denver and wherever, Catalina Island would be a good place, or Skinwalker Ranch. It would be just fantastic to have scientific, correlated instruments with radar data and heat signatures and sound and proper high resolution video and camera photographing them. I can't wait for that to happen. I'm sure you can't wait for it as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned that. I'm actually working on a little box that I'm hoping can be real low price that everybody can put in their house. And if you get a signal on your smartphone that your box has detected the Earth's magnetic field shift, then you can run outside with your smartphone and get a picture. I'm working on that right now, and
Yes.
hope to have that project ready to go in the next couple months. So we're working on that. But yeah, if, all these technology that we have, the sensors, and like Avi Loeb's project is awesome. Some of these are a little bit expensive, but if we could even get everybody have a simpler instrument, I think that'd be a good way to approach it also. I think we need both.
Oh, I want one. So suddenly you're sitting eating your pie and chips as you do in Britain, and your John's box goes beep beep, magnetic anomaly. So
Right.
you think that magnetic anomalies are precursor to something strange going on? I think that's likely.
Yeah, I've been doing research. In fact, my wife is working on a book about those 701 unknown sightings from Project Blue Book
Right.
that you mentioned briefly. But we're finding quite a few cases where compasses, especially in military aircraft where people have compasses right in front of them, a lot of times the compasses will go wild. And there's other evidence. There's electromagnetic effects such as cars stalling and other things.
Right.
So we're getting a list of these, and there's a lot of them, and people don't have compasses on them very often, but when they do, they tend to go haywire. So it's a theory, but I think it might be viable.
Wow, that was very comprehensive. Not only did we talk about a better way to take photographs using camera phones, but we also explored the whole issue of human perception and why the modern camera phone and video is often disappointing. Plus, I'm super excited, and I'm sure you are, when John produces his gravity detector that we can have in our house. When it goes off, run out and see the flying saucer over our roof. That really is going to be amazing. Let's use our superpower, crowdfunding and social media, to actually take scientifically provable pictures of the highly strange. Because of you, the truth will be out there.